Texas is a big state, really big, and it's only getting bigger. So how do you organize something as big as Texas high school football? Dave Campbell's Texas Football presents Need to Know, how UIL Realignment works. There are 1,228 public Texas high school football teams, and they are spread out. The easternmost team in Texas is Burkeville. It is 758 miles away from El Paso. They are also of varying size. The largest school in Texas with a football team is Allen. It has 6,664 students. The smallest school in Texas with a football team? Welch-Dawson. It has 19 students. They are also growing. 5 of the 11 fastest growing cities in America are in Texas. So how do you make Texas high school football as fair as possible with so many variables? That's a job for the UIL. The UIL is the University Interscholastic League, the governing body of extracurricular activities in Texas public schools, including Texas high school football. Every 2 years, the UIL redraws the districts in which Texas high school football teams play. We call this realignment. The new districts are announced in February, but it starts in October on Snapshot Day. That's the day that every school turns in their enrollment number, how many students attend their school, to the UIL. The UIL gathers this data, and then it's time to make the first chop, dividing the schools into 6 classifications. For example, if your school has more than 2,189 students, your school goes to Class 6A. If your school has between 1,150 and 2,189 students, your school goes to Class 5A. This goes on and on, all the way down to Class 1A, which is comprised of schools with fewer than 105 students. So now we have the schools separated into 6 relatively even classifications. But we're not done with the top line dividing quite yet. In Class 1A, 2A, 3A, 4A, and, for the first time in 2018, Class 5A, the UIL then splits those classifications in half into 2 divisions. They're called Division 1 for the bigger schools and Division 2 for the smaller schools. So let's take Class 5A as an example. Class 5A is comprised of schools with an enrollment between 1,150 and 2,189. There are 253 of those schools. The midpoint is at 1,839. There are 126 5A schools above 1,839 and 127 5A schools below 1,839. Those bigger schools make up 5A Division 1. Those smaller schools make up 5A Division 2. So really, the schools are already divided 11 different ways. But now comes the fun part. It's time to divide these teams up into districts based on geography. The logic is simple. You should play the teams closest to you that are of comparable size. Easy, right? There are 32 districts in each classification. Districts 1 through 32 in Class 6A, and Districts 1 through 16 in each division of Class 5A, 4A, 3A, 2A, and 1A. Those districts also fall into 4 regions. Region 1 is the first quarter of districts, Region 2 is the second quarter of districts, and so on. Generally speaking, the districts start out west and move clockwise around Texas. District 1 is usually as far west as possible, like El Paso, then moving its way up through West Texas and the Panhandle, into North Texas, down into Central Texas and out to East Texas, down to Southeast Texas, then over to South Texas, and finishing in the Rio Grande Valley. It's not always like this, but it's a pretty good rule of thumb. And dividing teams into districts can be much harder than you think. Not only are there big pockets of teams in major cities that need to be sorted through, but there are major geographic outliers that have no good solution. For example, what do you do with a team like Texas High in Texarkana? They're a 5A Division I school, but their nearest comparable school is 100 miles away in Tyler. And the next closest is 150 miles away in Mesquite. And then there are other things to factor in, like school districts who want to keep all of their teams in the same UIL district, and teams that opt up, that is, they choose to play in a larger classification. In the end, the UIL tries to make relatively evenly divided districts of relatively comparable sized teams in relatively close proximity to one another. Relatively. You might be asking yourself, so what? Why does this matter? This is all about the Texas high school football playoffs. To make the playoffs, you have to finish in the top 4 in your district. Then, to win a state championship, you have to win 6 playoff games. And UIL Realignment is the roadmap for all 1,228 UIL Texas high school football teams. They will now know the path that they must walk to win a state championship. In many respects, UIL Realignment is the start of Texas high school football season, and we can't wait.